Welcome. I am here today with Michael Griffel and with George Bleekman, and we are here to celebrate this year's Campus Design Sustainability Award. Michael is an Assistant Vice President in Student Services and Enrollment Management and the Director of University Housing. His work focuses on capital construction for the division, as well as developing and enhancing environments for student academic success, growth, and development in university housing. And he was selected to represent this year's University of Oregon Sustainability Award for Campus Design, an award that's sponsored jointly by Campus Planning and Design and Construction and recognizes units or individuals who have demonstrated leadership and creativity in support of the Oregon Model for Sustainable Development. This award this year celebrates the renovation and revitalization of Justice Bean Hall, one of our campus student residential halls. And joining the conversation is George Bleekman, owner's representative for design and construction, who was instrumental to the success of the project. George has worked at the UO for over 25 years and has been involved in multiple large-scale campus design and construction projects. So welcome to George and Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for Michael to start, tell me about the history of Justice Bean Hall and what led to the decision to renovate it.
Yeah, Justice Bean has been around for several decades. It's certainly one of the legacy residence halls on campus. Everybody knows about Justice Bean Hall. They say, oh, I lived in that building, or I lived in that building. We still have people who stop by and talk about their memories from the building. The community, the quality of community that was in Justice Bean, I think from the beginning, is really, really strong. But over time, it probably started to lack some curb appeal, and people who received room assignments in there were not always thrilled to get assigned to be in the building. Although once they moved in and once they created a sense of community, once they met other people and created a sense of community, they almost always really became pretty close with the people who were in it. And over time, it changed. The center of the building was a commercial kitchen, and so students never had access to that. The building was really two sort of these separate, we call them donuts, but these two square pieces, the east and the west side, that didn't connect with each other than this middle section that students didn't have access to. And there was really a need for lots of the building systems, the windows, the envelope, the roof. Everything was really challenged, the inner workings, plumbing. Light was really a challenge in the space. It felt a little bit dark to folks. And we really needed to put a lot of energy and revitalization into the living environments that are on campus. And so this was the highest priority building for either replacement or renovation. We did some feasibility studies and were able to do a renovation project. And with George's work, and David Ott Beckman, who is the Director of Capital Projects for University Housing, and our architect and the contractor team, they put together a really amazing project and transformed the building. I've had people ask me if we moved Bean further away from 15th Avenue by taking down that retaining wall that at one point was probably designed for creating space for the people who lived in the building away from the neighborhood. It turned into this thing that just was this really awful barrier. Taking that down created a really nice gradual slope. Adding a middle section that connected the two buildings, creating a beautiful academic residential corridor and commons in the middle, changing out the windows, the courtyards, which had felt a little bit dark, became opened up. Some of the concrete was removed, and some very simple steps were done to add a little more green space in the courtyards and to cut down the retaining walls. And so there were a number of really brilliant architectural and design moves that made an enormous difference. Now, when people are assigned to Bean, they think they won the lottery, that it's one of the favorite buildings that's on campus. And we're very appreciative for the folks that were involved in that project to be recognized for the sustainability practice. People worked really, really hard to have the building be sustainable in an infinite number of ways. So it's pretty exciting to see the transformation.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of for George, at a high level, how did you and your team approach the renovation? What were some of the key questions and considerations and pitfalls to be avoided, especially renovating such an old building with all these issues?
Well, definitely infrastructure. You know, all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing in the building was way past its prime, failing in places. There were some real seismic concerns as well, and envelope issues, insulation, etc. Just really kind of the nuts and bolts of architecture and MEP that needed to be addressed. And then, as Michael mentioned, you know, the sense of community and how do you bring these isolated donuts? It was really kind of sectioned off into these silos, which, you know, back in the 1950s and 60s was kind of the mantra for housing, to isolate these communities, each with their own individual, you know, dining room basically, and then kind of all fed off that central kitchen. So, you know, the questions were, how do you address replacing all the mechanical? How do you address the seismic issues, et cetera? And how do you build a sense of community, all while trying to add in a new admin facility or admin offices, since they were moving from Walton Hall. And then, yeah, I think that was kind of how the project was approached initially.
Yeah, so very ambitious for a renovation in a lot of ways.
Yes, but I think probably true to a deferred maintenance. I think that's the way they're all addressed. Certainly different agendas, and let's say a Straub or a Fenton, where you have, you know, a college or a department like the math department, but still, you know, philosophically, you still approach it the same way, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So for both of you, or for either of you, tell me about sustainability in the renovated buildings. What features are there? What changes were made? What are the known or future impacts of those sustainability design choices?
Sure. Well, from just a sort of a creature comfort perspective, there are now thermostats that are in each of the rooms. And so although there's not a huge range of temperature for heating, students can set the temperature and the thermostat. And there, the windows all have screens now and are very easy to open and to close. So there's that. And the amount, certainly all the lighting in the hallway, our LED lights, you know, we're very fortunate to be in the age where we've got LED lighting. And so we can provide a really nice level and a nice tone and hue at a really, really low energy usage and energy output range. And so the level of brightness and then the daylighting through the windows is pretty remarkable. And the openness of the learning commons provides this real sense of comfort. And the systems, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are unbelievably energy efficient. George can talk more about the technical specifications of those, but you know, it's instant hot water. The heating is very constant at a very low level of energy usage. I don't know what the amount of insulation that's in the roof, but that was addressed. Anyway, George, you can talk more about the technical specifications, but from a creature comfort, it's a very comfortable building for students and staff to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the lighting, that's a really good comment. You know, we were able to cut in half the lighting loads in the building. In a certain spaces, for example, the resident rooms, we knocked down those loads by about 60%. And then, of course, that's true throughout the rest of the building with LED lighting, et cetera. The heating is a hydronic heating system, so we have pump fluids throughout the building. It's a really efficient way of heating the individual rooms, and they do have a little bit of control. And they can also shut off their hydronic heaters if they wish, and then, of course, open the windows. They're thermally improved windows. They're vinyl windows, but they're very efficient. They operate very nicely. We also addressed the envelope itself. Essentially it's a concrete building with demising walls between the resident rooms that are concrete. So we didn't have a lot of latitude in trying to expand rooms or anything like that. So we were kind of given this building block, and we had to work within it. But we put windows back that were larger than the original aluminum steel frame windows. So it increased the feeling of lightness in the rooms. And again, insulating, and then adding, we had a lot of thermal breaks in the building, and we did some initial testing and for air infiltration. And then we did testing when we were finished, and we were able to reduce in the troublesome, some, let's say, inside corner resident rooms, things like that, by 50%. And in the resident rooms that were kind of in the field, let's say in the middle of a bar, we reduced the air infiltration by almost 70%, which is a huge, huge win. So the rooms feel really good, both in the summer and the winter. We don't have cooling in the rooms, but between the insulation and the thermally improved windows, things like that, they feel cooler. And the concrete mass helps with that because it tends to retain heat or cool. So just, moves like that. Yeah, I think that's...
And this is definitely not my area of expertise. So when you say the envelope, is that sort of the exterior framing of it?
Yeah, it's the exterior facade. So
Gotcha.
the envelope, and that would include, of course, the window and how the window meets the structure, things like that.
Yeah. And then did it achieve any sort of LEED certification?
It did, yeah. We hit gold.
Great. Yeah, fantastic. So the next question is, again, for both of you, but maybe Michael to start. What impacts do you think the new building will have on students, particularly in terms of teaching, learning, and research? We sort of talked about living comfort, but what about those other goals?
Yeah, a lot. Their academic resident, the main section of the building, which some people would call Main Street, but we would call the Academic Residential Community Learning Commons. There are 5 academic residential community spaces in there. So that's the large core section. You can just walk straight through that. It goes from 15th to the courtyard area outside of the Ford Alumni Center and Matthew Knight Arena, which the 15th would be the main entry, but the back entry that's off of the courtyard by Ford Alumni Center would also be a perfectly acceptable entry also. Each one of the learning communities has a section that is part of the main Learning Commons corridor and then also has a room that's adjacent to it. So if people want to be in the more common open area, they can do that. If they'd like to be in a little more secluded area, especially while classes are being taught, each of the academic residential communities has courses that are taught in the building. And there are also a couple of offices for the faculty and the staff that are associated with that learning community in each one of these 5 academic residential community spaces. There also are these dry erase boards that are suspended, I guess, the ceiling, and then there is a track that they're on. And so those boards can be pulled out to create a little bit more of a segmentation for the learning community if they want, or they can be pushed all the way back. And when all of those dry erase boards are pushed back, that main learning community space just is this big open space where there could be a concert or a speaker or a movie or an event or any number of things that would take place. During the day, you see people milling about and going to class. In the evening, the place just comes alive, and there are all kinds of events that are taking place in there. There's a faculty in residence. We're very lucky that Robin is a faculty member in exercise physiology. Robin does any number of activities, including yoga, right in the middle section of the Learning Commons space. We have David and Blanche McCormick are faculty fellows for the building, and they bring Sasha, who is the mascot for campus, I think. Their beautiful dog. And so there are faculty office hours that are happening there. There's the faculty fellow, the faculty in residence. Courses are occurring in the building. Students are studying in there in small groups and large groups. That's just the Learning Commons space. In the middle section, the tower that was built that connects the east and the west side, which is where the elevator tower is, and the stair tower, there's also a very nice lounge on the 2nd and the 3rd floor that connect the east and west side. And students are in those spaces nearly 24 hours a day, interacting with each other, studying, watching television, playing games, building community. And it is just really turned into a pretty magical space, academically, socially, and student development-wise. I love walking in there with visitors and asking people if they live in the building who are up on those spaces, and they say yes, and I say, what do you think of it? They say, it's great. It's the best building on campus. We love it here. And one can do that unrehearsed any time of day or night, and we'll get the same response. So it's pretty wonderful that students are really enjoying it, and it's really contributing to their learning.
Yeah, yeah, and that transformation of that center space from being a closed off kitchen to being this learning commons has enabled you to have those faculty offices, faculty in residence, those faculty fellows, all those folks now have space to engage with students and to be there that they just didn't even have before.
Absolutely, yes. And that common area, I guess I didn't mention it, but there are kitchens that are located off the center of that, which then go to the courtyards. And so one can see from one courtyard to the other courtyard across the middle section that had never been opened before at all. There was no opportunity. And so you can see that open space, and the courtyards are just so bright in green, and there's beautiful public art that's in there, the living table sculptures that were built, and it just creates this really vibrant, open, sort of lush area inside and outside that's pretty wonderful. And so studying and academics are happening inside and outside in the space as well.
Yeah. And so this is my last question, and it's maybe a little more philosophical in general, but for both of you, why do you think it's important to engage with sustainability topics at the University of Oregon? And when I say sustainability, I'm thinking here of the three-legged stool of sustainability, we sometimes call it. So that includes environment, equity, and economy. So feel free to talk about whichever pieces resonate most with you and with your work. And maybe we'll kick it to George to start.
Oh boy. Well, I guess I could start off by saying it's the right thing to do. And I think students these days really care, and it's important for us to show them that we care. And of course we have, building codes and things like that we have to comply with, but I think it's certainly larger than that. And it's also very cost effective. I mean, it's a really good use of student monies to demo a facility like Bean Hall and then put back 800 beds or 750 beds is incredibly expensive. And for us to do what we did with Bean Hall for the budget that we had to work with, I think is pretty incredible. And it took a lot of really visionary people, Malum architects and housing too. Housing is such a huge part of this with the various groups that are, whether it's the user group or focus groups, resident life and just everybody. It's such a collaborative process, and it's just amazing that, you could take a building like, or a facility like Bean Hall, with this really insular and isolated kitchen and just turn it into what we've turned it into. And again, it's such a collaborative process, and the sustainability is such a huge part of it. It's just doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think it really hits all three legs of that incredibly well. It really, from an energy perspective, from a human ecology perspective, from a cost for the students that are living in there, a sense of community and a sense of belonging. It really, it is a sustainable project through and through, and will be for decades to come. It's pretty neat. Sometimes everything just lines up, and it really worked with this project. We had phenomenal work from campus planning and facilities management, great design team, great contractor, lots of great collaboration from our academic partners and within the division. And I would say that this project is really going to have a super impact on students and the environment and economies for decades to come. It's pretty great.
Well, thank you both for your leadership and for your work, and congratulations for this recognition as well.
Thank you. It's very kind of you all.